You have this one man, an absolute genius, whose mind unlocks the most powerful, the most destructive force in human history. It's a force that would end a catastrophic world war, but it would also go on to haunt its creator for every single day of his life. This is the incredible triumph and the deep tragedy of J. Robert Oppenheimer. You've probably heard this quote before, right? These are the words that have come to define him, words he spoke just moments after he witnessed the terrifying, awesome birth of the atomic age. It's just a chilling line that perfectly captures the immense weight of what he had created, a weight he would carry with him forever. But okay, before the bomb, before all of that, there was the man. A man whose intellect was so sharp, so expansive, it seemed almost otherworldly. This is the story of his incredible rise. From his earliest days, Oppenheimer was a true prodigy. Born into a wealthy New York family, he got the best education money could buy. He absolutely blazed through Harvard, and then he went to Europe to study under the literal founders of quantum physics. And he didn't just learn it, he helped build the entire field in America, starting a world-class program at Berkeley. You gotta understand, in the world of science, there's a kind of hierarchy, a pecking order. And right at the very, very top, that's theoretical physics, the realm of pure ideas. By 1941, Oppenheimer wasn't just playing in that sandbox. He was one of its undisputed leaders. But Oppenheimer's world of abstract theory, of chalkboards and equations, it was about to collide head-on with the brutal, harsh reality of a global war. A call was coming that he, and really science itself, just could not ignore. And look, the stakes could not possibly have been higher. Scientists, many of whom had actually fled Europe to escape the Nazis, knew exactly what a Nazi atomic bomb would mean for the world. It was this desperate, terrifying race against time, and the United States absolutely had to win it. So to lead this monumental effort, this impossible task, they chose one of the unlikeliest pairs you can imagine. You had Oppenheimer, the charismatic, almost poetic intellectual, and then you had General Leslie Groves, a pragmatic, hard-driving, no-nonsense military man. Total opposites. One came from the lab, the other from a construction site, and yet, somehow, their ambitions met, and together, they were going to try to do the impossible. So on this remote mesa that Oppenheimer actually knew and loved from his youth, he built a secret city from scratch. He gathered this all-star team of scientific superstars. We're talking Nobel laureates, brilliant young physicists, all of them dedicated to one single top-secret goal: build the bomb. This quote right here really gets at Oppenheimer's other genius. See, he wasn't just a brilliant physicist. He was a masterful leader. He had to manage this huge collection of massive egos and brilliant minds, keeping them focused and driving them forward in what one scientist later called a miniature Athens. That was his real gift. So, years of theory, of engineering, of just relentless nonstop work, it all led to one single terrifying, world-changing moment out there in the New Mexico desert, the moment the idea became a reality. And can you just imagine the pressure? The scientists themselves had calculated a remote, but non-zero chance that the chain reaction wouldn't stop, that it might actually set the entire atmosphere on fire and destroy the world. They pushed the button anyway. At 5:29 a.m., theory became fire, a light that was brighter than 1,000 suns. The first atomic bomb detonated with the force of 20,000 tons of TNT. It completely vaporized the steel tower it was sitting on and literally turned the desert sand below it into glass. The nuclear age had begun. Less than a month later, that fire from the desert was unleashed on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The devastation was almost beyond comprehension, but it did bring the most destructive war in human history to a sudden, violent end. For Oppenheimer, though, any sense of triumph was immediately just buried by tragedy. The relief of the war ending was met with this profound, crushing sense of guilt. He told President Truman this directly, a feeling that would really define the entire rest of his life. So in the post-war world, Oppenheimer, now the father of the atomic bomb, he took on a completely new mission to try and control the monster that he had helped to create. You see, the arms race didn't stop with the A-bomb. Oh no. The next big leap was the hydrogen bomb, also known as the super. A fusion bomb isn't just a bigger bomb, it's a totally different beast. It uses a whole atomic bomb as just a trigger, a matchstick for a reaction 1,000 times more powerful. Just a truly terrifying escalation. And Oppenheimer wanted absolutely no part of it. As the chairman of the General Advisory Committee, he and his fellow scientists formally and forcefully recommended against building it. They didn't mince words. They called it a weapon of genocide. And that act of conscience, well, it set him on a collision course with some very powerful people in Washington. His opposition to the H-bomb, combined with a lot of old suspicions from his past, it would all be used to orchestrate one of the most tragic and infamous downfalls in American history. At the very heart of this campaign was a man named Lewis Strauss, the chairman of the AEC. He had been humiliated by Oppenheimer in the past, and he was deeply suspicious of his politics. Strauss saw a perfect opportunity to silence the nation's most famous scientific critic and just remove him from public life entirely. And the result was this security hearing in 1954. But let's be honest, it was a show trial. Historians call it a kangaroo court. They picked his life apart, they questioned his loyalty, they even twisted his scientific opinion on the H-bomb and used it as evidence that he was disloyal. The verdict was a foregone conclusion. The hero of the Manhattan Project had his security clearance revoked. He was effectively exiled from the very government he had served. But it would take decades, a very long time, for this historic injustice to finally be addressed, and for the truth behind his public humiliation to finally come to light. Decades later, actual internal documents from the Atomic Energy Commission were declassified, and they revealed just how unbelievably rigged the hearing was. I mean, the judges were collaborating with the prosecution before the hearing even started. They were talking behind the scenes the whole time. And Oppenheimer's lawyers, they were never even allowed to see the final recommendations used against him. It was a complete sham. And then, nearly 70 years after the fact, the U.S. government officially set the record straight. The Department of Energy, which is the successor to the AEC, reviewed the entire case and acknowledged that the whole process was a politically motivated farce, a substantial injustice. And with that, the 1954 decision was officially vacated, nullified. His name was finally cleared, a posthumous vindication for the man who was cast out by the very country he helped save. You know, in the end, Oppenheimer's life is this profound American saga. It's a story of genius and guilt, of incredible triumph and deep tragedy. This quote from Senator Fulbright really forces us to ask, what is our responsibility to these brilliant, complicated people who change our world? And more importantly, what happens when we betray them?